afternoon, Rotarians and guests. Hope everybody had a fantastic weekend with the spring weather. Welcome to the Rotary Clubs of Toledo's virtual meeting, featuring Tom Winston, President, CEO, Toledo Port Authority, and Rhett Morgan, Aviation Consultant, and their presentation on the Toledo Express Airport study and recommendations. But first, I'll ask Butch Krieger to deliver a reflection and Janina Douglas to lead us as we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Lord, we thank you for life. We thank you for organizations like Rotary, where we can accomplish great things for mankind. Now help us each as individuals to likewise go out and do great things as we exercise the golden rule to one another. In thy name we pray. Amen.
Please stand if you are able for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Butch. We could read your lips. It was a fantastic prayer. And thanks, Janina. Also, thanks to Spartan Chemical, April's weekly meeting sponsor. Thank you, Rotarian John Romer. I've got a couple of updates. Just a reminder that if you have guests, we want to recognize your guests for, of course, attending our meetings, but we would like to know prior to the meeting if you have guests. Again, please let us know prior to the meeting so we can introduce your guests. It's very difficult to do when we find out the day of the meeting. Our service committees are meeting now to review the third cycle grant requests. And as mentioned in last Thursday's spoke, if you're not on a committee and thinking about joining a committee, now's a great time to sit in on that committee that you're interested in to see how things are done, what they do, how they do it, as far as giving grant monies away, and you get to kind of see how it operates. That way that when you do want to join a committee for the new Rotary year, you'll pretty much have a good idea of which committee to join. Also, President-elect Bob DiNardo is seeking members for leadership roles in next year's committees. If you're interested in a leadership role in a committee, please speak to Bob. And then my final remark, the Rotary Bowling League wrapped up this year with a dinner banquet last week. Just some quick results from the league. First place winners, the first half winners, first place half of the league winners were the Holy Hookers, Cliff Frankowski, Hunt Sears, Tom Kuzno, and Brad Rubini. And the second half winners were Tommy's Angels, Sherry Sears, Stacy Hammer, Wendy Gramza, and who else but Tommy Romer. If you want to bowl in the league next year, please speak to Tommy. It is a lot of fun, and you'll be glad you did. And finally, here is Program Committee Chair Bob Savage to introduce today's speaker.
It is my pleasure to introduce Thomas Winston, CEO of the Toledo Lucas County Port Authority, and Rhett Morgan, consultant and senior director at airline-specific aviation consulting company. Thomas, as most of you probably know, has been now CEO of the Port Authority for a couple years. He was previously the CFO and spent stints at Owens Corning, Pfizer, and Nuveen before that. But he's been at the table for quite a while and helped lead a number of new develops. I guess I'll talk very briefly about the port and the program here. So this this program will primarily, they might talk about a couple other projects, will primarily be talking about the airport part of the port's operation, and the new Amazon Air Daily Gateway. The port is focused on air cargo and industrial development opportunities within their footprint, which is probably a bigger area than most of us know. But the Amazon Air Gateway is the newest piece of that, and is certainly an important piece. The first plane arrived actually just a little over a month ago on March 17th, and should create 50 new jobs. Will service daily flights and support quicker delivery of Amazon packages to an extended area here. That's obviously just one piece of Amazon's expanding operations within our area. Rhett Morgan then, I think, is giving the bulk of the presentation on the air part of the port's operation. Prior to working for Airline, and he can tell me if I'm pronouncing that wrong, Rhett spent time at Southwest and at Delta Airlines, where he was involved in network planning, revenue management, corporate sales. Rhett holds his bachelor's from Kansas State University and has an MBA from Embry-Riddle University, which is one of the foremost aviation and aerospace universities in the country. And without further ado, I will turn the microphone over to Thomas, who has also become quite involved in the community here. And Thomas' board seats include not only, although I don't know where he gets time for this, ProMedica, the museum, the opera, and the Boys and Girls Club, among others. So not only is he a big help to economic development around here, but he's certainly spending good time with the community as well. Thomas, glad to have you today.
Thank you for that introduction. Really appreciate it, and the opportunity to speak to your fellow Rotarians today and the invited guests. And good afternoon, everyone. It is indeed a pleasure on behalf of my colleagues at the Toledo Lucas County Port Authority to join you today in your meeting to talk about the airport here. Many of you may know, but for those who don't, we manage and operate Toledo Express Airport as well as Toledo Executive Airport. And we have served in that capacity since 1973 on behalf of the city of Toledo. That management and operations entail a number of things, including overseeing commercial air service, cargo operations, logistics, as well as some of the other operations that are taking place at the respective airports. What we wanted to do today, at least start off, as Bob alluded to, we have Rhett Morgan with us today, and Rhett serves as Senior Director of airline-specific Aviation Consulting. They serve as our consultant for air service here in Toledo. And Airline is currently working on an airport study to look at ways in which we can perhaps optimize our utilization of the airport, whether it's on the aeronautical side, which would entail passenger service, cargo operations, but also non-aeronautical opportunities as well. And Airline is a known national entity, particularly in the aviation space. They serve almost 70 clients around the world, including those in the United States, and they work collaboratively with airports and destinations and governments and airline partners. Bob alluded to Rhett's background, particularly spending 15 years in the airline industry as a network planner and developer in several different capacities with Southwest Airlines, with Delta Airlines. And, we are absolutely happy to have Rhett and airline-specific team on our side. Rhett is going to talk about the study that's being conducted now by the Toledo Lucas County Port Authority with regards to looking at best practices with a focus on air service. And Rhett's going to speak to this group today about the study, but he's also going to speak to the group about industry and trends that are happening in the industry. I know there's a lot of interest with respect to air service, particularly in light of COVID over the last year and how that's impacted the industry. And Rhett's going to give us an idea of where the industry is now versus a year ago, and probably even talk about historically what air passenger services would look like, both from a broader national perspective, but also as it specifically relates to Express. And he'll talk about the study, and he'll talk about the conclusion of the study and what should be expected from there. And at the conclusion of Rhett's presentation, we'll certainly entertain any questions to talk about air service, but also some of the other things that Bob alluded to as it relates to Toledo Express. So we talked about Rhett and his background, again, very diverse. He's worked on a number of things, and some of his accomplishments, including specifically having a diverse portfolio of airlines. He works with the Pittsburgh International Airport, as well as Louisville and Nashville, just to name a few. Rhett specifically had his hands on helping Asheville become the fastest growing airport from 2018, I should say, to 2019 in the country. He also assisted the Omaha Airport with landing their first ever international service from Air Canada, and also was the lead on the AirTran merger on route integration. Rhett specifically, while at Southwest Airlines, his team launched 85 new markets, including the build out, and he was the chief architect on designing Dallas Love Field service post the Wright Amendment. So with that being said, I will turn the mic over to Rhett to provide a presentation and perspective on Toledo Express Airport.
All right. Well, thank you, Thomas, and thank you, everyone, for allowing me to speak today. And Bob, you did say it right. It's airline-specific, so kudos to you. A lot of people do kind of butcher that name, but you got it. And I really like some of those bowling team names. I'll have to, that was kind of creative. Sounds like a fun league. So congrats to the winners. But let me go ahead and share my screen and then make sure everybody can see it. Let me go full screen view. I'll wait a minute. Can people or someone let me know if you can see my screen? Okay,
You're good.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So as Thomas mentioned, what I want to do today, I'm actually going to start with a bit of an industry overview, drill that down into what that means for Toledo, and then talk about the study, kind of where we're at in the timeline, and then what some of the particular results could be. But I want to make sure I answer any questions. So I'm going to keep an eye on the clock here. I know the agenda, and please ask me questions at the end, Thomas, of things I've said in the slides or anything regarding the Toledo Airport, air service in general, or what's going on with the industry now. So let's get started. So state of the industry. So the first things first, this chart here basically is talking about the United States, basically domestic capacity for the industry and how it was growing year over year, starting back in 2019 to where we're at today. You know, the reason I wanted to put this in there is just some context for everyone in the room. In 2018, the airline industry, domestic airline industry, had record profits. It was the all-time high profitability for the industry. That had been due to many factors. There was industry consolidation, cheaper oil, you know, just a really good, healthy economy. 2019 continued to see strong profits for the industry, and you saw the airlines were growing. This is month over month, sorry, year over year by month, about 4%. They were kind of tracking to the GDP growth. Comments were being made by the airlines. This is the strongest revenue environment we've ever seen, especially in domestic marketplace. Then you move COVID hit. We all know the impacts that had. So you see the light blue lines start going down in April. So COVID hit end of February, early March. The airlines had to have a little bit of time to make their reactions, and they started pulling out capacity. Capacity is the amount of seats that are in the air. And so we saw numbers down 50%, down 73% was the lowest that we did see from the airlines. But if you've seen moving forward throughout the end of 2020 and into 2021, there's a recovery taking place here. And the airlines are seeing better and better results, and their confidence is increasing. But times were really dire for all of us, right? But especially the airline industry. At one point in 2020, the airlines were burning up to $150 million in cash daily. So just wanted to kind of show you a bit about the history here of COVID. But then the next slide here, want to show you how recovery is going. So what this chart is to orient you is this is daily TSA checkpoints. So the lovely TSA group that we all must go through whenever we fly, and put our bags through. Hopefully not a pat down, but what this shows you is the percent of travelers year over year, basically since COVID started. And you see that blue kind of squiggly line there. There were some peaks around holidays as we started seeing travel come back. But in the last 3 or 4 months, we've really seen the numbers increase. The chart on the right shows that percent of travel recovery. And I just want to call out the first 11 days in April, we are now at 62% recovery of where we were at in 2019. So 62% of the traffic is coming back. A lot of this success in the last month has been via spring break. For anyone who has gotten out and flown, the planes are really relatively full. And indications from the airlines are that they are seeing leisure demand very close to what it was pre-COVID, likely driven by the vaccinations, people ready to get back out and travel. So for the industry, for us on our side, this is a very good thing. It's an encouraging trend that we are seeing. The big piece that is still missing is the corporate side. And even though corporate's starting to come back, it's still relatively small percentage. So the next slide is, this is just a little chart that I put together that also breaks out what the airlines are doing specifically by each airline. So these are the 8 or 9 major domestic airlines in the industry. And my comment up there is the ULCCs are the most optimistic for May and beyond. That's in terms of capacity. So just so everybody knows, ULCC is ultra low cost carriers. So that can be the Allegiants of the world, Frontier, Spirits, Sun Country. They're those carriers that have the low fares, typically might do a couple days a week, fly to Florida, fly to Vegas. We have Allegiant at Toledo. Those are the ones that are really seeing a strong recovery right now, which makes sense with the leisure segment still being the primary driver. What I've circled on the chart for you is just the 2 carriers that we currently have at Toledo and kind of where they're at. So you have Allegiant at 101%, actually means they have as much capacity as they did in May of 2019, plus 1%, which is pretty amazing considering where we're coming from. And then Americans all the way at 80% too. So just some signs that there is a confidence building in airline recovery. But just a little bit of kind of where some numbers, I guess, to help prove this. So airline executives are optimistic going forward. I'm not going to read each quote. What I'm going to summarize them is earlier this year, multiple CEOs of the airlines came out and said, you know what, by the March quarter or March and April itself, I think we're going to be close to break even on that daily cash burn. If you remember earlier, I told you they were burning 100 to 125 million per day. And I can tell you that Delta's first quarter announcement results came out last week, and they did indeed break even or started generating cash in the month of March. So this is big. This is, another encouraging sign. Now, you've got to remember, they still lost $1.5 billion in that quarter, but they're starting to become cash positive, one. And number two is they even hinted at a profitable September quarter. The little chart on the right is American. They released this, which I thought was pretty interesting. The blue number there is net bookings. And it's by week throughout the year and for 2020, 2021 versus the red line, just net bookings 2018, 2019. And you see the two lines converging. One thing that's interesting, net bookings. So that is true bookings with cancellations taken out. At the beginning of COVID, there were more cancellations per day than there were bookings. So there were actually negative net bookings, but this is net bookings, and you can see the demand is almost to where it was pre-COVID. So very, very encouraging signs. But two other data points too on the Delta side is they said for Delta, leisure is 85% level of where they were in 2019, but corporate is 15%. So the big question that everybody has out there, and probably many of you in your organizations are trying to determine too, is when are we going to start flying for business again, if you're not already? And will it be that same level as pre-COVID? And will our destinations change? And quite honestly, those type of information is things that Thomas and I, when we're out working for the Toledo Airport, talking to our carriers, that's the type of information that we're trying to glean as well. So that's real quick on the industry. I'm just going to switch over to Toledo itself now. Many of you probably know this, but just a reminder. So this is just a chart that shows capacity and onboards at Toledo Express from 2014 to 2019. The dark blue line is seats. That's capacity. And then the blue is onboards, basically passengers that were going through our front door. So, leading up to COVID, we had 4 or 5 years of consistent growth, hitting almost record highs. So really things were, kind of following, like I said, the industry. Y2 were strong. There in the 2017 timeframe, we landed the Charlotte service on American Airlines. That has been a significant win for the airport, for the community, for American. I talk with them a lot. I'm based here in Dallas. I have strong relationships with American Airlines folks. They have been very, very pleasantly surprised with the Charlotte and how well the community responded to that. So we were on our way, trending up before COVID hit as well. So just wanted to point that out, a quick review. Next slide is, and just so everybody is comfortable and knows, this is our current, what we have now at Toledo Express. So on the left there, you see we basically have 5 markets. So we have American to Chicago, American to Charlotte, and then we have the Allegiant Airline services to Orlando, St. Pete, and Punta Gorda. Most of you might already know this, but I also just wanted to take a chance to make sure we're educating the group here. So basically, we have a strong carrier in Allegiant that serves our leisure segment, and they're very happy with the Toledo market. We've had ongoing discussions with them to see potential expansion, maybe even to the west. We would love to see something, to a Las Vegas, to a Phoenix, or even, additional Florida service. But they do very well at Toledo and really have maintained their capacity throughout the pandemic. On the flip side, we have American, which, we have the Chicago service, we have the Charlotte service, and they are our only legacy carrier that serves Toledo. In the chart in the upper right, this is also just shows you each nonstop service we have and how many flights per day. And this is for May of 2021, so next month. The reason I show this is in February, late February, March, American suspended the Chicago service. And I just want to talk to the group about that a little bit. When they did do that, it wasn't just a Toledo thing. It was basically a Chicago hub thing for American. That's traditionally a business market, both for the local passengers, but for people going past Chicago. A lot of the business folks use the Chicago service. More leisure folks can use Charlotte, get you gateway into Caribbean, into Florida. So that's why Chicago is not on the table here. Now, the good news I have to share with everyone is that Chicago is coming back. And they have told us that it is in the schedule. It is coming back in early June. So it will be back. It was a temporary suspension, but we have it coming back. However, the reason I bring it up is for my next slide, I just want to show you guys something. And this is for everyone on the phone that we deal with and one of the challenges we have at the airport. So this talks about Chicago load factor is behind the hub average and the peers. So take that jargon out. What does it mean for everyone on the phone here? So this is all of American Chicago's nonstop routes. And then the bars represent the load factor. And load factor in the airline terms is basically percentage of the seats that are full on every plane for that month. The December 2020 data is the latest data that we have publicly from the government. And as you can see, as I've highlighted down on the very far right there, Toledo only ran a 29% load factor. So 29% of our seats were full. Couple other metrics on the screen there. The average for the hub was 60%. And I threw Flint just as like a competitive kind of regional peer was 46%. So nobody was great, right, during even COVID. But it is things like this which basically drives a lot of our airline partners' decisions. Right? They're looking at the metrics. And when we heard that they were pulling the Chicago service, when we see the data like this, there's not a lot that Thomas and myself can do, right? Besides just be aware of it and tell airlines, hey, look, we're going to do what we can to promote the service. Please believe in us when you come back. When you come back, we're going to push the Chicago offering, the connections that are there and above and beyond. But I just wanted to put a little bit of numbers behind the Chicago story to kind of help explain to the group, some of the metrics that these airline planners are looking at. So the next one here, there's a lot of bar charts or, charts on here. I don't get caught up in the numbers. I just grabbed this from the study, but two things I want to talk to you. One of the biggest challenges that we have in Toledo, and I've been working with Toledo Airport for 2.5 years. So this isn't just about the study that we're working on. This is about ongoing air service efforts. But the biggest thing that we have a problem and a challenge is our proximity to Detroit, and that the leakage is a significant challenge. So I'm just going to talk to you about this first bar here, this Toledo primary. Basically, if we draw a map around 30, 45 miles around the center of Toledo, and we look at who in that circle, what airport do they fly out of, you can see 79% fly out of Detroit. Only 10% of this sample flew out of Toledo. So, and then there's a few others, those 4% up there, Chicago, Cleveland, Columbus. Don't really focus on that. The point is, 79%. So 8 out of every 10 people are driving to Detroit. 9 out of every 10 are using a different airport. Look, I was on the airline side. I know the challenge, right? We can't pick up and move where we are from a geographic position. But this is a significant hurdle for Toledo and basically future growth. That equates the numbers. You see this kind of bullet point over here on the side. When you think about it in terms, that means 600 passengers a day who should be using Toledo based on geographic position are using other airports to start their journeys. That is significant. That is a huge amount. And, that's one of the things that our study is looking at. I just wanted to throw some of these numbers and kind of tease the group out there what this means. Like, look, we're not saying that anyone is going to have used Toledo 100% of the time, right? Whether it's business or leisure, we all have to make our individual decisions based on time and price. But the opportunity here is significant if we could reduce that leakage, even 10, 20, 30%. So some of the things that Thomas and I have been involved in this study so far has been reaching out to different stakeholders, community members, groups, corporations to try and help educate them about this challenge that we have. Because I'll just leave you with this on this slide. Every time someone goes and uses Toledo, you make our job that much harder because you're adding to Detroit, or sorry, when you drive and use Detroit, you're making our job that much harder because you're adding to their numbers, right? And their numbers are what the airlines see. When Thomas and I go to the airline, the first thing we have to say and tell them is we're not a suburb of Detroit. We are our own market and our own deep population. So give us a chance, right? Give us the opportunity to prove to you. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of share that. Real quick here, you might be asking, well, okay, well, we have challenges in Toledo. How are we doing versus our other Ohio airports? This is something I share with Thomas every month. And this just looks at the month of May of 2021 versus May of 2019. And sorry, there's airport codes on here, but just for everyone knows that LCK, that's Rickenbacker, which is kind of the secondary airport in Columbus. They're down 14%, but they only have Allegiant there. They don't have any legacy carriers. So that kind of shows you, their leisure is back. Then you get to Cleveland, Columbus, Akron, Toledo. We're pretty much in line, with the other airports in Ohio as far as where we are in a seat capacity perspective. So we've held our own during the pandemic. So, that is kudos, but this still doesn't mean there's not a huge opportunity for us as we come out. So I'm going to shift now and just talk a few minutes about the study. So look, this just shows kind of the 3 or 4 work streams that we have in this study. Thomas hit on it: financial and operational review and the assessment of the airport. So as I mentioned, we've been commissioned to give an unbiased overview of the airport and really what the airport can be, what our challenges are, what our opportunities are, and what it's going to take to get there. That's within our control, right? So then within the study, there's these 3 segments. First is passenger air service. So that's really my forte. My deep experience of the airlines comes from that side. So, what is the potential of Toledo for air service in the future? If we were to reduce those 600 passengers by 10, 15, 20%, does it elevate our chances to get additional routes, new airlines? We're looking at that, understand the demand of the environment and market leakage. I kind of hit on that already. We also are really defining a competitive set of peer cities to do benchmarking. Do we have what we should have? And I will tell you, one of the biggest things is when you look at our population versus the number of seats, we're one of the most underserved markets in the country. But we know why, right? We know what unfortunately, it's some of the behavior, and I get it. Once again, we get it, but it's the choices people are making, and where they fly to. And it's also because of the regional proximity to Detroit. And then lastly, we're going to have a route and or airline strategy for new markets. And I'll add retention too. I always tell everyone air service development is about air service retention and then development. Thomas hit about some of the success I've had with Asheville and Omaha. One of the first things an airline does when they're looking at growing in a city is they look and see, well, how do we do there now? Or, it kind of makes sense. Are we making money there now in Toledo? If we are, let's grow it. If we're struggling, it's going to be very hard, right? And then other airlines watch what their competitors are doing. So that's going to be the passenger air service side. Quickly, the financial review. We are probably 80-90% of the way through this too, as far as gathering our information. We're really looking at kind of the financial health, sustainability of the airport, taking a look at, financial statistics and reports over the last 10 years, reviewing the agreements between the tenants, the vendors there on the property, and just seeing if they're, if it's in line. What do our costs look like? Are we competitive? That's another big thing, right? And I will give you a teaser. We are. The cost position at Toledo Express is very favorable, and that's something that the airlines are drastically focused on right now in COVID. And of course, we'll do another benchmarking versus peers. And then lastly, the cargo industrial development. So I think it was Bob and Thomas hit on it, and I'll let Thomas, if there's any questions on it. Obviously, the Amazon news was a huge win for the organization, both in terms of employment, business development, exposure. Look, I have other clients across the country asking me, how did Toledo do that? That's how this works, right? How did they get that? And that so there's huge kudos to Thomas and his team. But that doesn't mean we're done, right? But we have to factor in, getting Amazon there. What does that mean next for cargo? Are there other opportunities? Do we need to shift our focus elsewhere? And then industrial development. So it's all that kind of non-aeronautical things. Are there other things that we could do on the airport property, the asset of the airport to help drive revenue and increase the financial health. And, I brought in a team of experts that have 70, 75 years of experience that work with me to identify, do this study, and provide our recommendations. This is a timeline. Go through this. I'm not even going to go through this too much because I want to leave plenty of time for questions. But if you see up there, we're on track. We're at the end of mid-April now. That's phase 2. We're really analyzing all the data that we've received in from different stakeholders. We had a good conversation, just for example, with Dana Corporation earlier today, kind of talking to them about, corporate travel. We've talked with different councilmen and the mayor, and we're just trying to really get a good grasp of, what is going on in Toledo, and then also just interviewing and getting our reports from Thomas and his team. So we're trying to take all this in. We're really an analyze part of this process. And then we go into May and June where we'll start presenting the findings. I don't have exact dates, and if Thomas wants to speak to it later, but we are planning on we're going to give this final study in late June. We'll get a date out there so everybody is aware, but we're also going to do a public forum in earlier June probably that will be open to the public to ask questions they might have. This is just FYI for you guys. I don't think it's published yet or anything like that, but all of kind of the end of this study is really going to be happening in the June timeframe. And we're well on our way. I feel really good on where we're at right now. So I'm going to end this before questions with these kind of things. Next steps. So I just talked about that. The final study and its findings will be in late June, working towards this public forum. Lastly, I just say for this group that's on here, and once again, I appreciate your time. When you are flying, whether it is for personal or for business, please consider Toledo Express. Take a look and, see what the options are. Some of the other things that we're looking at is trying to do a cost calculator, a time calculator. By the time you drive to Detroit, would it be about the same total trip time as if you went through Toledo and connected in Chicago or Charlotte? If you're on a business trip to your same destination, do you factor in the cost of parking at Detroit versus Toledo? I could talk for hours on this, but I just really trying to kind of implore you to think about that, because every time, you do use Toledo Express, you increase the likelihood that we can get more capacity for everyone on this call, more nonstop markets, more flights. So that's the fly local. I used to, when I was on the airline side, the use it or lose it. It's kind of cliche, but it's true. And so just something to think about, and that's why I threw in that Chicago slide, right? That Chicago slide showed we were second from the bottom. Well, that should get us riled up as a community and as a market. We don't want to be down there, right? We want to be at the top as the ultimate goal, but those type of rankings of where we are is exactly the type of things that the airline executives and planners are looking at when they make their decisions. Change the perception. So I've been working with Toledo for 2.5 years. And, one of the things I've found out through this study so far, 2 things. One is there is a perception within the airline planners that we are a suburb of Detroit, right? That they can just serve our whole market via Detroit. So Thomas and I are consistently battling that and telling them, no, we have this big population. We have these corporations. We have these fantastic things happening. But then there's also perception that, we're Rust Belt City, all the things you could think about, right? And so we work on that. The other perception I've sensed locally is on different calls and stakeholders is sometimes people say, I've never even flown through Toledo Express. I've always done Detroit my entire life. So, I'd like to say, well, give us a chance, take a flight out of Toledo. Secondly, I would also say I've heard a lot of, well, I love Toledo when I want to go to Florida. I fly Allegiant when I want to go down to Florida, but if I have a business trip, I just think about Detroit. And that's a perception that we need to try and change in the community as well. Like I say, it doesn't have to be 100% change. But if we can educate and try and get an alignment on that, that'd be great. and that kind of comes into this last unlock the potential. You know, given our market size, given a lot of the healthy economic things we do have, I think there is potential in Toledo, but it's going to really take kind of a cohesive alignment, kind of a grassroots effort. And, you know, my personal goal is the study is one thing, and that's going to be great for everyone, but I want to take, you know, this effort and build it into our annual air service planning that we're doing, you know, constantly, Thomas, Joe, and myself, to get you guys more service, to get you the service you deserve. So let's see, I might have went long and I apologize, but that is that is the last slide. So I'll open it up, and I know Thomas is still on if there's questions about the airport in general or anything.
Thank you, Rhett.
Sure.
I think that was quite informative, and I hope it certainly served a purpose for my fellow colleagues and residents in the area. You know, one of the things that we want to have come out of this study is certainly more education about Toledo Express. And I think two things come to mind for me. I know there's a lot of focus on air service, and I think coming from the study and the exercise that you and the team are performing would be certainly to demonstrate and be able to echo the diversity of the airport, right? You know, the diversity of things that are going on from an aeronautical as well as a non-aeronautical side. And there's a lot to certainly be happy about. I mean, if you're in this area from that perspective, you mentioned going to air service conferences, and you and I had the pleasure, your group had a conference in Biloxi a couple of weeks ago. And as I flew out of Toledo to Charlotte, connecting to Biloxi, I saw colleagues in Omaha, as well as Louisville and Flint. And, you know, specifically after the announcement of the Amazon, you know, in the middle of the plane, hey, Thomas, can't wait to get off this plane for you, and talked about how you guys were able to land that. I mean, it's a feel good. So we've got to talk about the diversity of what's happening at the airfield. But also, I think with the analysis that your team will perform with respect to air service, which will be holistic in nature, is really setting the right expectations on what Toledo Express could be from an air service standpoint, passenger service. And I think that will resonate at the conclusion of your study there.
Keith, you're up. I'll unmute you now.
Oh, finally. Is it working?
Yeah,
You're
we
live.
can hear you. We'd love to see you.
Well, you don't want to know where I'm at the moment, but anyway.
Okay, we don't need to see you.
Two quick questions. It'd be interesting to know how much former federal subsidies have to play in getting air service for passengers into the secondary market like Toledo. And then, and I know that the study's not going to answer this, but I guess for Thomas, I've actually went to Detroit once because I needed to be on Wi-Fi. And right now you can, if you take that hour and 40-minute, 2-hour flight to Charlotte, and you're a business individual and you need to be working as you go, it's tough. Is there any plans to upgrade the service out of Toledo to Charlotte? But more importantly, just what's going to happen if there is no additional federal subsidies like there used to be in the past?
Rhett, are you better served to speak to that?
Yeah. So on the federal subsidies, you know, that was one that helped us land the Charlotte service. So it's through a program called the SCADSD, Small Community Air Service Development Grant. We won that, you know, back a number of years ago, and was able to land the Charlotte service. Just so everyone on the call knows, we did submit a grant, 2 months ago, with a letter of support by American for Dallas-Fort Worth service. And we will hear about that from the government in, they're now saying October. Probably won't be sooner. Hopefully it's not later than that, but I wouldn't rule out, that's not the end all be all. If we don't get that, I still think there's opportunity there. That SCADSD program is pretty small, actually. As far as when you look at the number of new routes that come out, I'd say it's less than 5% or a direct correlation to the SCADSD program and efforts. There for a while during COVID last year, when everything was going really, really, really south, a lot of airports, even some of our peers, lost the airlines completely. Some airports lost all commercial service, right? And I'd be lying if I said I didn't concern me at a certain point, right? With how things were going for a market like Toledo, given our proximity to Detroit. But we've maintained our service, so I think we're well positioned. And for that, as far as not having to rely on federal assistance. Second part of your question, unfortunately, yeah, American, their regional jets are not Wi-Fi. Not all of them have the Wi-Fi capability. Some of the other airlines do. I will tell you this, if we continue to build and those load factors, I didn't show you our Charlotte load factors compared to Chicago. Charlotte are really strong, right? And as load factors creep up, once you get, I call it spill. We call it spill at the airlines, but if you get annual or average load factors of 80, 85% or more, the first thing a planner does is like say, I want to add another trip, or I want to put a bigger aircraft on there. If we get bigger aircraft on Charlotte, all the mainline have Wi-Fi capabilities, right? So that would help you. And maybe we would get a third trip before a bigger aircraft, but that would be the path. So once again, it kind of comes back to, supporting the service that we have will lead to more service and potentially Wi-Fi aircraft. Unfortunately, we can't, there's nothing else we can do as far as tell them to or ask for certain aircraft with Wi-Fi. There are other airlines where some of the regional jets are equipped with Wi-Fi. American, not all of them, but that could change too, right? They're constantly changing their onboard product. So I hope that helps.
Guys, we got a couple of good questions in chat. I'm going to try and combine a couple of them together. First of which is, how can we work to attract more business and leisure travel out of Toledo Express? And second, Don Yerkes wants to know about direct passenger rail between Toledo Express and Detroit Metro. He asked specifically, but I would expand that a little further as we hear about more passenger rail investment throughout the United States. Could that be a catalyst for transportation, or how could that play an impact on this?
What was the first part again? What was the first part?
How can we attract more business and leisure travel out of Toledo Express?
Yeah, well, I think that's what we're trying, I think it's kind of an education process. My goal on this study is to show what we could be if we got some of those passengers that are, choosing to fly other airports right now. Let's say we got 20% of those. What does our employments look like? Does that put us closer to a size of an airport? I'm just throw something out there, Flint or Akron, Canton, and they do have more service than we do, but they have more people using their front door, right? So it's unfortunately, and I was kind of looking in the chat here too, and I saw someone, and it's cliche, but it's true. It is a bit of a chicken and an egg, a cart before the horse, all that, right? I've talked to a lot of people, and they're like, well, if you have more flights, I would go through Toledo. Well, you gotta support the ones you have to get more flights, because the airlines right now, especially coming out of COVID, they're going to do low risk maneuvers and strategies with their assets, right? So it's very hard for us to go and say, hey, look, if you put it there, our people will get out of their cars, right? If what they want to see is basically, hey, look, your Charlotte service is doing amazing. Your Florida service looks great. We need to put more in. How can you help us if we do put more in? And then we could answer with something that says, well, look, we have a Fly Local campaign, or X amount of corporations have signed up to say, hey, we'll do 10% of our traffic through Toledo. There's a lot of different angles you can take on that. And those will be some of the things that I'll talk about in the study too, because I've seen some that worked and I've seen some that failed. I will tell you, most of the time, it just really takes, like I said, kind of a grassroots effort, kind of talk the talk, right? Instead of just saying walk the walk, but hopefully that helps.
And Daniel, one of the things that we're doing, particularly at the port and our PR marketing team specifically, is really trying to go directly to flyers, to the marketplace. We've used a varied approach on outreach and communication, and we're doing things now that are going directly to those who are looking to fly. I mean, for an example, Expedia has been a great resource for us, where we're doing more marketing and PR through the Expedia and the many different social media touch points that they have. And we're seeing a tremendous amount of what we call caption ratio, but also a lot of basically click-through ratio that will indicate that people who are flying are now seeing the ads of Toledo Express and basically using it as an opportunity. So we saw some latest data that is very encouraging, and we're going to continue to do that. And as well as the team, specifically reaching out, doing TV ads on select stations to, now that people are now looking to get back into the swing of things and flying, it's those type of approaches that we'll have to take, as well as going directly, as Rhett mentioned, talking to the large corporations here. And, again, we know Toledo Express isn't going to be for everyone, but if we can perhaps get a turn of 20% or a quarter of the people who are flying out of DTW as opposed to Toledo Express, that'd be a game changer for us. And we will incrementally see increased service here, where I think it's important to set the right expectations. There's some who believe we should have 2 million passengers there. That's nice and novel, and I would like to raise my hand and say that, but reality is we're not going to have 2 million passengers at Toledo Express. But can we strategically reach a Dallas market directly for our business community? Can we reach a Phoenix market? Can we go to strategic locations that may have a combination of leisure and business? I think there's an opportunity there, but we have to continue to approach the airlines that we're talking to directly about the appetite for the community to support that type of service.
Okay, I'm not sure when I'm going to get cut off for questions, but Bob Savage, I got you up next.
Rhett, thanks. Nice and good presentation. And the last time I used Toledo, it was outstanding. I will admit it's been a little while since I've used it, probably for a couple of the reasons you talked about. Is there anything from our business community or some of our bigger corporations that might help drive additional flights? And Thomas may have just answered a main part of my question. I know you're going to work through and get done with the study, but could you point to a couple different places and say, I think these are possible next additions for Toledo?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Bob. I'll take that. And yeah, I think Thomas just kind of hit on it, on what the steps would take to get new flights. But I would tell you, I talked about Dallas. I think that it's always easier to grow with your current carriers, right? So we have American in the market. We have the Chicago service. It's Chicago can get you a lot of places too, but it's a great kind of the upper Midwest. There is some international out there. Charlotte gets you, kind of the Southeast, Florida, Latin Caribbean. Dallas would be Dallas is the American's largest hub. It's their most profitable hub. It is a monster in a good way. Everything does very well there. It's just got so much scale, so much size. So that would be one that we were talking with them about, for the last 2 years. Great connections into Texas, great connections into Latin America, and even I know Owens has a tie down here. There's a lot of just surging businesses in Dallas, with probably ties to Toledo. I think some of the others from the business standpoint, we really have to look at, and this is one thing that the airports always have a hard time, is you think about it from the airport side. Well, what makes the most sense for Toledo? Well, that's part of it, but it's also then what makes the most sense for the airlines. You have to think about where are they growing. And if we looked at some of the other carriers, there could certainly be probably like a airport DC area, perhaps like a Washington Dulles or a Reagan National. No, the bar's high on those, right? Especially Reagan National, because there's slot restrictions there. But maybe one of those, could be Houston's another one, or a hub. Denver, I would add, could probably be a top 5, I think, wish list from kind of the business perspective. Some of the, basically, if you look at all the airlines, kind of their biggest hubs would be next in line. And not only, is it getting corporations to use Toledo, increase our numbers, but things we're trying to get is, well, where's their travel where are they ultimately going, right? And is that going to change? Because the airlines have historical data. So when I was on the airline side, we could get that from the government. What I didn't know was, where was Corporation X going to start traveling in 2022 if it's different? Does someone have a new business investment in market X? Where's the economic development? Where is migration? If people are moving to and from Toledo to starting to, and I'm making something up here, Raleigh, Durham, is there something there? Those are the types of data sources. I call them secondary data sources, second homes. I pulled some stuff I'm going to show in the study of where do people in Toledo have second homes across the country. I see a lot in Southwest Florida, to be honest with you. And we already have some service down there, but I'm sure everyone would want more, right? Type of thing. So those are kind of the different data sources that we use. And then it's saying, okay, well, we think there's an opportunity here. Then it's going to be like, well, what's it going to take, right? And someone asked about federal subsidies. I'll tell you, and I don't know if we go down this path. There are some communities that don't use federal money. They use private money, and they're called minimum revenue guarantees. And corporations and different corporate groups say, hey, we'll put together X amount to try and help an airline come in, prove the market, year one, year two. I'm not saying we're going to recommend that, or I'm just using that as another example of sometimes, what it takes.
Well, I appreciate all your time answering all these questions. I think there might be a few more in chat. I was trying to keep up with them as best I could, but the boss told me 2 questions ago that I gotta, start cutting it off.
We saw some things, Daniel, and hopefully we answered it with some of the responses. And, people like Don, I know, who said, hey, listen, I used to travel to Pittsburgh 3 or 4 times a day. And we can reach back out, I think, on some of these individual questions to answer them. A question like that has a lot to do with industry changes, right? Consolidation in the industry, when US Air is now part of American and Northwest is part of Delta and United and Continental together. So industry changes over the last 20 years or so have played a big part on why you see some of the changes and how those changes have impacted secondary airports like Toledo Express. So we can probably reach out individually and address some of those questions as well.
Perfect. Thank you both so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you all for the opportunity, and looking forward to talking to the group again soon.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Thomas and Rhett. What a great presentation. Exciting, informative. As our thanks to you, we'll be sending you a well-known book in Toledo, Historical Tales of Toledo, authored by Rotary past President Clint Mock. We'll also be making a donation to the Polio Plus Fund in your name. So thanks again. Yeah, there were a lot of questions that kept on flying in, but I think you did a good job of just kind of summarizing some of those questions toward the end. So again, thank you so much. Fantastic presentation and information that Toledoans want to know about. So now we'll move on. Another moment we've all been waiting for. Past President Chuck Mann with another episode of Chuck's Chuckles.
President Alex, did you really say that the questions keep flying in? Did you really say that?
Yes, I did.
I thought maybe you did. Okay.
I figured someone would catch that.
Yeah. I'd like to announce that I've started a new exercise regimen, a post-COVID exercise regimen, and I want to share it with all of my fellow Rotarians. So this is exercise primarily designed for people over 60, but I'm sure that all or most of our members can do this exercise. You begin by standing on a comfortable surface where you have plenty of room on either side. With a 5-pound potato bag in each hand, extend your arms straight out from your sides and hold them there as long as you can. The object is to try and reach a full minute and then relax. Each day you'll find that you can hold this position for just a little bit longer. After a couple of weeks, move to a 10-pound potato bag, then try 50-pound bags, and eventually get to the point, and this is where I am now, where you can lift a 100-pound potato bag in each hand and hold your arms straight for more than a minute. And then after you feel confident at that level, put a potato in each bag. President Alex.
Oh, I wondered where you were going with that, Chuck.
Yeah, how many people saw that coming from a mile away?
I have noticed your shoulders are a little bit more bulky than I've ever seen them. So
it's all in the posture.
Okay, next week, Monday, April 26th. We have Jack Kazakowski, CEO of Junior Achievement, and Jim Pollock, CEO of JA Northwest Ohio. Fantastic program, looking forward to that. There are 3 committee meetings today, vocational services, disability services, and international services. So thanks for joining us today and a great presentation. We are adjourned.
The word peace is common in most languages. People can talk about peace treaties or times of peace. It means the absence of war. And in the Bible, the word peace can refer to the absence of conflict, but it also points to the presence of something better in its place. In the Old Testament, the Hebrew word for peace is shalom. And in the New Testament, the Greek word is eirene. The most basic meaning of shalom is complete or whole. The word can refer to a stone that has a perfect, whole shape with no cracks. It can also refer to a completed stone wall that has no gaps and no missing bricks. Shalom refers to something that's complex with lots of pieces that's in a state of completeness, wholeness. It's like Job, who says his tents are in a state of shalom because he counted his flock and no animals are missing. This is why shalom can refer to a person's well-being. Like when David visited his brothers on the battlefield, he asked about their shalom. The core idea is that life is complex, full of moving parts and relationships and situations, and when any of these is out of alignment or missing, your shalom breaks down. Life is no longer whole, it needs to be restored. In fact, that's the basic meaning of shalom when you use it as a verb. To bring shalom literally means to make complete or restore. So Solomon brings shalom to the unfinished temple when he completes it. Or if your animal accidentally damages your neighbor's field, you shalom them by giving them a complete repayment for their loss. You take what's missing and you restore it to wholeness. The same goes for human relationships. In the book of Proverbs, to reconcile and heal a broken relationship is to bring shalom. And when rival kingdoms make shalom in the Bible, it doesn't just mean they stop fighting, it also means they start working together for each other's benefit.